This is my 1978 Fender Jazz Bass. It's a gorgeous instrument that I picked up off of a college tutor and I fell in love with it as soon as I saw it. I read Geddy Lee's big beautiful book of bass that talks all about vintage basses, and I became obsessed with wanting my own vintage bass collection. I had a 1999 Rickenbacker 4003 which was hardly ever being played, so I sold it to buy a bass that I knew I wanted to own and play live, and I'm so happy with it. I haven't put it down at all. However, this is a strange era for Fender, as some people don't necessarily like the guitars from this time period. The reason being with the quality control in the company, or the actual lack thereof, for a world-leading guitar manufacturer. Fender also introduced the 3-bolt necks in the early 1970s, and with the lack of quality control, this led to loose neck joints, which people were very rightly concerned by, and Fender then discontinued the 3-bolt necks, went back to the original 4-bolt in 1981. Do not fall into the trap of believing 3-bolt necks were a way of cutting corners and are any worse than the 4-bolt necks. If it is done properly, then they should work exactly the same. 3-bolt necks were introduced on the Jazz Bass and Stratocasters, which were considered the deluxe models at the time, and Leo Fender would go on to use this design on Music Man and G&L guitars after leaving Fender. The poor quality control led people to blame the 3-bolt necks, which started the misconception that it was the fault of not having that 4th bolt. In my opinion, this bass is amazing, and a friend of mine owns a 1976 P-Bass, which is also an incredible instrument. Do not be fooled into thinking guitars from this era of Fender are less cool or any worse than a different era of Fender. Each guitar has its own sound, feel, and not every guitar fell at the hands of the poor quality control of the time. It's up to you whether you like it or not. Now, I play bass for 2 indie rock pop style artists that create music that requires more than just the natural sound of a bass, but a more modern synth kind of sound. I'm very lazy in terms of not wanting to buy a keyboard, and I also love the sounds that I can just get out of my bass. I'm heavily influenced by Ian Martin Allison, who is where this idea came from, and you should definitely check him out after this video. I know he has a video titled New Sound Old Bass, which shows off one of his synth sounds, and that's where the idea for this video came from. So I'm going to show you my setup, the sounds I create and how I create them. I should mention I've bought all of these pedals myself. I have not received anything for free or been asked to do a promotion. I just happen to love pedals made by a certain brand. This is how the bass sounds, plugged straight into Logic, no amp or cab sim, just straight the eye. I'm now going to add my cab sim, which is this Darkglass Elements pedal. I have 5 cab sims of my choice, which I can edit or change in the Darkglass suite through Bluetooth on my phone or plugged into my laptop. There is the choice to add a noise suppressor, a preamp, change the cab sim through loads of different cabs, mic placements, which microphone is on the amp, and then I can add an EQ, which has a few presets by Darkglass that I can choose from, or create my own. I currently stick to just cab sim 4, as that is the one that I edited and use for every gig. I haven't changed anything about the other available slots yet. I leave the preamp off on my cab sim, as this Darkglass B7K is a personal favourite of mine, and I have used it on every single gig I play, with these settings left exactly the same. An even blend of dry and wet signal, no volume boost so it's level if I turn it on or off, but I do just leave it on all the time. The drive is left at about 10 o'clock as it is a nice bit of crunch to mimic the likes of a Motown kind of sound. I leave the switches on a flat EQ and boost or cut only if the situation calls for it, which I will demonstrate. Each one of these EQ pots is a boost and cut by 12 dB, but I leave everything flat other than a small bass boost which I usually use on my actual amp too. The next pedal that I always leave on is this Darkglass Luminal. I didn't have my element at this point and was looking for a good compressor to help with synth sounds. I know Ian Martin Allison mainly uses Origin Effects compressors, and I did check out the Kali 76, which is an 1176 sim. The 1176 is a really cool rack compressor that has its ratio controls as buttons. You could press all of the ratio buttons at the same time and create this wild compression effect that seems to cause an overdriven type sound. When looking at the Kali 76, I came across the Hyperluminal, which also offered an 1176 sim with the option to use the all buttons pressed mode, but it also offered two other compressor sims, a bus SSL compressor and a sim of the original Darkglass compressor, the Supersymmetry, which was discontinued. I personally leave it on the 1176 sim at the ratio of 8:1. The volume is set so that it is at an even level if I ever turned it off. I have an even blend of compressed and not compressed, a mid attack to release, and compression on full. You can plug this pedal into the Darkglass suite and edit each compressor sim to your desired specifications too. Now we are getting onto my synth sounds. This is my Aguilar Octamizer, which is an analog octave pedal. This means it turns my bass signal into ones and zeros and creates a more synth sounding lower octave, in my opinion, to a digital octaver. I leave everything pretty much at 12 o'clock as the volume is even to it being turned off, and the tone of how it is currently set is a sound I'm happy with. Because this is an analog octaver, I need to make sure the signal going into the pedal is clean and easy to translate into ones and zeros, otherwise the octave jumps, so I turn my bridge pickup off and roll my tone completely off. You could even go one further and put flat wounds on your bass, which would be ideal, but I like the natural sound of this bass with round wounds on away from the octaver. The octave sub-bass sound is cool and does the job for me a lot, but what if it's an aggressive sounding synth bass that they're after? That's where this fuzz pedal comes in. Again, it's pretty much left like this as I like the sound of it, but I'm not opposed to changing a few things if the moment calls for it. I don't add a bass boost through the switch as the octaver provides enough bass frequencies that a bass boost would destroy the speakers. That is my setup for every gig, and as I said, I tend to leave my elements B7K and Hyperluminal always on. The settings don't typically get messed around with, as I've found where I like things to be for a sound I enjoy, but depending on what a situation calls for, I'm more than happy to change things up to fit what's needed. I do some recording for my good friend Yejun Chun, who creates heavier type of music to the artists that I typically play for, and so recording for him, I use my B7K with the drive turned all the way up and the switch for the highs set to boost, which, as I said earlier, I will now demonstrate. If you stay to the end, thank you very much for watching, and go and check out Ian Martin Allison. Huge inspiration for me and an amazing bass player.